appreciate it. Good evening, everyone. It is, let me find my little notes here. It is May 12th, and this is our second CRA meeting. Good evening and welcome to the City of Keystone Heights CRA meeting. It is our second meeting for this subject matter, May 12th, 2025. I would like to have a prayer before we get started.
Yes, I'll do that since I didn't hire a pastor. Heavenly Father, Lord, thank you for this evening, Lord. Thank you for this council and their willingness to put in the time and effort to make sure our community reflects something, Lord, that would be good for all concerned. Thank you for Janice and Jamie putting in so much time and preparation. And we thank you for our freedoms. Lord, we thank you for those around the world tonight that are protecting us. We ask that you protect them and our first responders, Lord, and that this meeting would bring forth things that would be honorable and pleasing to you. All these things we ask in Christ's name.
Amen.
Amen.
And I'll lead us in the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Can I get a roll call, please?
Councilman Cussler.
Here.
Councilman Welch.
Here.
Mayor Rodenhoff.
Here.
Councilman Lewandowski.
Here.
Councilman Knight.
Here.
All present, man.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Do we have any public comments?
Light on the public.
Good job. Could I ask that you call Councilman Cussler Vice Mayor Cussler?
Oh, of course. Excuse me, sir.
Good catch. Thanks.
I'll
Thanks,
listen
Dan.
Thank you, Councilman Lewandowski.
He won't even be tapping his watch at 6:59.
So here on our agenda for discussion are review the items from the last workshop. And I know, Colonel Booth, you've sent us a bunch of documents to review, which have been great. Great job on collection of all that, the spreadsheets and correlating everything for us.
Yes, ma'am. I do want to note, we did, for the public, when we produced the agenda, we did publish the 141 item spreadsheet from the 2015 with the analysis. But I did fail to add into that distribution and post a couple of documents that Councilman Lewandowski did provide ahead of time, so that was my mistake. Two of those documents are in front of you in the stack. And I'm sure Councilman Lewandowski will call your attention to him when he covers them. And then he also brought in another document today as well. So you've got a bunch of hard copies in front of you that you're not used to seeing. That's what is in the stack that's in front of you today. And Drew, if you could bring up the PowerPoint slide, just go to the agenda. It just as a backdrop. And
Which PowerPoint?
it's the one that's dated today. I apologize. I think I've got it dated the 12th.
Yes.
And you just go down the agenda. Just to remind everyone, reviewing the items from the last workshop, the due outs that came out of that were for each of the council members if they wish to identify any real estate, like a handful, maybe 2 or 3 items of real estate that we may want to try to procure, or real property. And then for each of the council/board to review the 12 proposed project areas in the draft 2025 community redevelopment plan amendment. I think I got that right. And propose any additions or deletions from that list, and we'll give you an opportunity to talk about those next. And then we'll look at, based off the information that the council or the board provides, try to get to consensus on what does the list of projects need to be in the 2025 plan. And if we can get to it, at the end of the day, try to prioritize our efforts of those 12, 15, 10, whatever it ends up being, trying to prioritize those would be, I'd say, an A plus for today's meeting. But I think what we really need to do is at least get the consensus on what are the projects that need to go into the draft plan today. And, yes, ma'am.
I was just gonna say, Jamie did a great job with this chart, and I think what's important, it would seem to me, to cut down the whatever, how many pages, to look at the ones that, since you just complete your strategic plan.
You're talking about this document, right?
Yeah. I think the projects that are both, are in your strategic plan, that can be in the, draft CR, or on the draft plan, or you want in the plan. I think those are the types of projects you should, kind of emphasize. And so that we're not going through pages and pages. And just to remind you what you felt was important last meeting, and what I wrote up, so I kind of just wrote it down real quickly, is the idea of finishing projects, looking at the projects you started and finishing them, trying to engage public, looking at the downtime, and you did mention to align things with the strategic plan, so that's why I felt it was important to look at that list. And then look at sidewalks, which I know were mentioned, purchasing property, which you talked about, and look at model blocks to kind of impact, to show impact. Pick a block that you want to put the grants on so that it shows impact and completion. I think as you go through this list that Jerry did, which is great, there are a lot of completed projects, so you should be proud of that and move on that. So let's figure out the ones that aren't completed. That would be a first step. If they're not completed and they meet with your strategic plan, that might be something you want to prioritize, that we can kind of get zeroed out on what, the top 5 or 10 projects that everybody that the council feels that are the ones that you want to put your emphasis in, because there's not a lot of money to do a lot of these projects. I mean, some of them we might be able to get grants for, we might be able to bond, there's various ways to do it, but the reality is there's only a certain amount of money. So you have to make sure you maximize those dollars, as well as maximize the dollars are put in the areas that you have the highest priorities of.
So there were 2 bits of homework that I asked you to do 2 weeks ago when we did this. So one was this list and go through what we've done. The other one was to get us the data on who in the city limits has water, who in the city limits is connected to the sewer system, and how many more connections would we need to make. Were you able to get that completed?
The numbers that I do have are that on sewer, it is, I believe the number of residents in the city is 427.
Okay, so we're talking about residences, not residents.
Residences, pieces of property, parcels of property.
427.
27.
Okay, does that include commercial?
I do not know if I've got the breakout between commercial. I don't know the answer to that. I just got this one actually in from the county today that was mentioned by CCUA at a meeting late last week. And out of those 427, 7 are residential properties that are hooked up to sewer.
Okay, and how many are hooked up to water?
I believe all of them, is my understanding, that everybody's on city water in the city limits. But I can double check. I was not able, CCUA has been very kind in providing their GIS information. I have been an absolute abysmal failure to figure out a way to open it up and look through it. But I'm going to continue to work on it.
Jamie, if you can send it to me, I'm probably going to open it up.
So,
yes, ma'am, I remember you asked me to do that, I did that.
That's all right.
everybody that resides in the city limits has CCUA water available. Everybody does not have sewer available. I'm sure there are some homes with backflow limiters where people still have a well that they can water their yard or something like that. I hope nobody still has pipes for their sprinklers going down into any lakes, but I wouldn't put it past some folks.
I used to have some on my property.
Yeah.
Well,
But
is that
to drive.
rules? Is that against the rules?
I'll talk, man.
Well, that's just anymore.
That's never been my personal preference, but anyway, I don't know that I totally understood your ask, but Jimmy's smarter than me, so he picked up on it. I thought we were talking availability, because I knew there were very, very few residences actually on sewer, but, the hookup, anyway, I'll be quiet now, I've already said what I know. I'm confident, because we asked when we were at CCUA if everybody had the water available, and they did.
Okay, well, just to follow on, we don't have to have it this meeting, but I would like the breakdown between commercial businesses and residential pieces of property that are connected to the sewer system.
We should be able to provide you a map and then overlay the commercial property.
That'd be even better.
Yeah.
Oh, that'd be
Okay.
awesome.
Yeah.
So,
If their GIS should be compatible to the GIS system I have, so, and with the counties, so we're able to pull up the commercial properties in one color, we're able to get the ones on sewer, et cetera, should be able to.
Okay.
It's probably the most frustrating program that the law allows, but when you work with it enough, it makes pretty maps, you know, it's the best way to do it.
Mr. Lewandowski, would you mind me asking a question?
No.
Is this germane to what you're talking about? Mr. Booth, let's just say, for the sake of argument, that somehow we wave a magic wand and we have 420 homes that we want to connect to a sewer system. Does our local treatment plant have the capability for us to connect all those homes to the system? Do they have capacity to handle that right now?
We'll have to reach out to CCUA and ask. We met with them. Charlie, I don't know if you remember if they said they did or not. I know they said that they were in they were in the process of seeking funds and doing an infrastructure improvement project on the water system to boost their capacity. I do not remember what they said about the sewer's capacity of the existing wastewater treatment plant inside the city.
If you, since it sounds like you're planning on asking that question, would you ask them also if they don't have that capacity, when they think they might have it, so we know how to plan?
Yes. And one other thing, Councilman, what I would propose, because I think I would recommend if the board would like, I can coordinate with CCUA the next time the board meets and ask them to come give us a full briefing to cover existing sewer and water coverage, to cover costs, what they see, the process that's required for extending mains, hooking up, removal of sewer, septic, what are the current costs for new septic, and I've actually drafted up an email requesting this. If the council board is interested, and I can ask them to come out and maybe do a 15-20 minute presentation and then entertain questions and answers. That way we can kind of cross all of that information, the entire board can hear it, and we can get a back and forth going with CCUA if they'd be willing to come and do that, if the board is interested in that.
Sounds perfect.
So just a quick back of the envelope calculation. If you say each one of these conversions to get on sewer costs between $20,000 and $50,000, $20,000 is more than what my brother-in-law had to pay. $50,000 is what CCUA says. We're talking about $8.4 million to $21 million to do this project. Okay. It is, but if we don't put it out there, the state's not gonna help us. We gotta get it out there.
There are other municipalities that are going through the same thing, and so we just need to get in the mix with them and play ball.
I'd like to lead the pack on this one.
It smells like money somewhere.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, for the 482, and I don't know exactly their capacity, but 482 is basically a larger subdivision, which they're constantly hooking up. But I just checked, they serve approximately 50,000 customer accounts. So 482, and their
Where's 482 from?
He said they're 480.
No, 427, which,
427 residents.
400,
427 of them are-
how many?
So like, we're looking for
420.
420, I know, well, it's at
Okay,
420.
420.
So what I'm saying is 420 dwelling units for CCUA is like hooking on a couple of large, decent sized subdivisions, which they do every day, and they have, because they serve 50,000, they have a lot of customers, so it's not a big number for them. So my gut feeling, they probably have the capacity, now whether which plan and et cetera they have, but that isn't a big chunk into their overall
yes,
number.
so based on what you just said, that would be a less than 1% increase in what they'd have to deal with.
Yeah, yeah, and this is getting from Google, so, but I'm assuming that they're pretty good on their numbers, how many they get, so.
Okay.
And their information is,
But that's an important question, and it goes back to the 2011 plan, where CCUA projected a capacity increase, and I was told that that happened, but I don't know if it got all that it was predicting, if it got more than what was predicted. So perhaps having CCUA come and start with that particular project and talk to us about what's happened since might be a good idea. Okay. Yeah, they were supposed to do that in 2012 or 2013.
Yeah, I think from the state level though, that's something that's really being pushed to these communities to come up with a plan, because there's gonna be a requirement to have it done by a certain date. So maybe when we go to these Florida League of Cities meetings, and certainly I'll find out too from the other mayors, like what they're hearing and seeing with activity with that subject, because I know they're all in the same boat like we are.
And in my mind, the side benefit of this is that our citizens now have a concrete benefit by being inside the city limits. And we could even use it as a lure to get others to come into the city limits so that they can receive the same benefit. So I think there's a whole additional aspect of this that's very advantageous to us.
Well, and also down the road, if we look to try to annex in some area to increase our size a bit, that's like a nugget, like you said, that's attractive. I mean, right now, when you look at that annexing idea, we don't really have a lot of things that we can offer, except maybe if it's, a dirt road. Pretty basic there, but that's a huge added benefit, I think, when you look at it like that.
I agree. Okay, so that's item 1 on our agenda. Item 2, recommended properties. Right?
Yes, sir, I don't have a backdrop slide, but we can hold off on this. I didn't have a backdrop slide for discussion on recommended properties, but.
Okay, so my one-page handout here. Okay, what I did was I went to Zillow.com and I looked at properties inside the city limits that were vacant properties and for sale. And I labeled them A, B, C, and D. And then I looked at their price and I got a picture of them. So, A, $500,000. This is on the same side of 21 as the CVS. As you're going from downtown headed toward Middleburg, it's on the left. It's before you get to the old Sabos. It's basically a bunch of trees right now. The next one is across the street from there. It's where they have often held the Christmas tree sale. It's across the street from the, I think it's called the Ameris Bank, and the post office. That is currently for sale, $500,000.
I think that one is under active contract.
Okay, well.
It's one of the two that are 500 are under contract, from what I saw just yesterday.
Could be.
Certainly worth checking out.
C is a tiny, tiny parcel. It was hard for me to even find this on the map. It's on one of the side streets that comes off of Lawrence, and it's $11,900 for this tiny parcel. The only thing I think you could build on there is parking spaces,
And where's that one located?
which is, so you see on the map below, you see Flamingo Street?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just south, but it's on the east side of, oh no, it's on the east side of Lawrence.
Oh, okay.
So, my thinking was that if we wanted a quick win for not too much money, grab this piece of property and say, we're gonna make more parking, which we could definitely use. And you can't build a building on it anyway. It's too small. And then the last one, D, this is over on Orchid Avenue. There's 3 different properties. I am not sure what it is zoned for, so I couldn't write commercial, residential, I didn't know. It is, how do I say this? So the buildings on the right are mainly, the electric company, Clay Electric, as well as upper left, that's Clay Electric also. So, and the buildings that are south, that you can't see on the map, those are residential. So this is like in a in-between zone. You know, what could you do with it? You could buy it, make a park. You could buy it and build a new city hall. You could buy it and wait to see what you do with it. I don't know. But again, this is within our price range.
What is the total area here again?
I wanna say they're about a quarter of an acre each,
Is that all?
I think, something like that. I did this 10 days ago, so I'm a little fuzzy on it. I'm sure we could pull it up again on Zillow. There was another page to this. Where was my other page? Oh, vacant lots in the community redevelopment areas. Okay, it's another presentation actually.
Different attachment.
Yeah, there it is. Okay, so these are more details. Okay, so, so this presentation, it shows, do we have this up? Can we bring this up? Okay, the first picture are, on the right and left side of Lawrence. These are not for sale. Yeah, there it is up on the thing. These are not for sale, but they're vacant lots. And so this is something we could look at.
So the one that's on Lawrence on the right between the nutrition retreat, that little open space, that is owned by, Karen
Yes.
Nelson.
I think she owns both of them. I'm
Yeah,
not
she owns
sure.
both.
Yeah.
Yeah, she owns both of them.
She owns all that,
Right.
yeah.
I'm just pointing out where there's vacant lots and possibilities.
And then the one that's on the other side across the street, that's owned by the Atlantic Logistics.
Yes.
Okay, they must have recently bought that.
They've had it for a little bit. They've looked at expanding, that's why it's still vacant.
I
So-
suppose recent is relative. Okay, the second slide shows, this is where the old water tower used to be. This is right behind the volunteer fire station, which is now owned by Pinch a Penny.
Half of that is owned by us.
So the circle
sorry?
area,
Half
Yeah.
of that circle area is owned by us.
Correct.
The back half.
because this is the
closest
part that I
to
looked into
Walker.
last year. We own 0.19 acre of
Yeah,
that.
my understanding was it was used by the fire department, the volunteer fire department, and when they left the area, it reverted back to us.
Only half of it.
Who's got the other half then?
Pinch
Pinch penny.
The building.
the building.
Okay.
The
So
building,
the other half
and
building.
and the piece of property right behind the building is owned by Pinch Penny, and
Okay.
then the other part is us.
There's like a fence, you can kind of see where the border is, if you go and
Okay.
look right at it.
Well, I'm just, again, identifying vacant lots
Mhm.
or possibilities.
Like I thought that'd be a great area for parking.
Right. The third slide, this is the two lots that are for sale, each for $500,000. One is right next to the Family Dollar, the one in the upper left, and then the other one on
That's-
the, is across from Ameris Bank.
And those are both, the one across from Family Dollar is owned by Christea.
Dr. Reseda, yeah. And he, put through the process to get it rezoned because it used to be residential.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
I believe the planning and zoning approved for it to be rezoned commercial.
That's correct.
Okay. And then the next slide shows a piece of property between the Taco Bell and the Capital City Bank. And that is vacant. I think a lot of fast food places have looked at it, but have said it's too small. And so therefore, it's, I don't wanna say ripe, but it is a target that might fit our needs or might help us, or, you know, an option for another park or parking, or there's a lot of options. But what I was just looking at was vacant lots, vacant properties inside the city, because one of the things we talked about was property acquisition. And then the last one, is that, maybe that's
On
the,
Sylvan Way.
is that by Sylvan Way?
Yes,
It is.
Sylvan Way and.
Mine was on Cardinal Street.
State.
Okay, no,
You talking about the
really
small
s-
one, sir?
The really small one is off Cardinal, just, so on this map here, you can see Cardinal Street at the very top. And this tiny, tiny piece for sale for $11,900 is somewhere between Lawrence and Beasley Lane. And it's on the south side of Cardinal Street, on the bottom side. And that's where I was thinking we could do parking. And then the one that is circled, that is next to, I think he's a real estate guy. He plays Santa Claus and
He owns that.
Yeah.
He owns
He's a
that.
really good guy,
Yeah,
right?
but he owns that.
I don't know who owns it or anything, I'm just identifying vacant properties. That's all I went through when I did this. And those were the only vacant properties that people haven't built on that I thought existed inside the city limits.
There was a property next to the Irish pub on Commercial.
That's not in the city limits.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
outside.
that's okay. Yeah, so that same situation with that little hardware store. Well, that's on the south side of Commercial.
That's in the city limits.
Okay, what do you know
Yes.
about that?
So it used to be called Oxidine, and before that it was,
True value.
It's,
True value, yeah.
it may have sold last week, we followed a few calls on that. Now that, me and the vice mayor have been discussing that one for quite some time.
Yeah, that one was
Yeah.
2.2 million.
If we wanted to make a central city complex, seems like that would be ideal.
yeah, I think we're late to the game on that.
Well, I don't, my neighbor works for Sunbelt, pretty high up, and that's who the guy out of New York was looking at buying it for. But anyway, y'all have your discussion, I'll have some questions and comments.
So, let's see here, what else did I add? Oh, I added 2 more pictures here, if you could put those. Okay, and I specifically did not put circles on this because I didn't want to advertise it to the world, what I was looking at.
As you broadcast on YouTube.
Well, I know, but you know how many people actually watch that, it's a very small
How
number.
many?
Okay, and so the first one was to expand the beach. The only way to do that is to buy the home on either side of the current beach, really. That's all you can do. Now, the home that's to the west or to the left side of this map is a beautiful home. It's one of the most expensive homes in all the city. First of all, I think it would be a shame to buy that and try to tear it down and make the beach bigger because of that. And secondly, I wouldn't want to do that to those people, so I wouldn't say that. The one to the right is still a nice home. I mean, it's on the lake and everything like that. But it, at one point, went through a really hard time. It was for sale. And so that's a possibility, I would say.
You're talking about the one on the, to the right of the
The
beach?
one to the, as we look at this picture,
Across from the basketball courts.
If you leave the
yeah,
parking
across
lot-
from the tennis courts and the
Yeah.
basketball court. Right, in that area, right there.
Because here I am right here.
Yeah,
So I know that person. They just put like a huge addition onto their home. The garage and everything on the front is right off the road. If that's the one.
No,
that's-
that's-
different one. No,
that's-
it's-
that's-
He's talking about the one on the other side.
You're talking about the other side?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that house was for sale about a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Or just that other one.
Right, right.
On the other side. Right here.
yeah.
You can
So-
see it's right across, right next to our parking lot here.
Okay. Yeah.
Um,
the one that's like right
The reason I bring this up is that there have been opportunities over the past 10 years plus, and the city, either didn't even talk about it, or wasn't prepared, and could not take advantage of it. And so, I'm not saying we should go after either one of these things, but I wanna point them out, and I wanna say, if the opportunity presents itself, we should discuss it. Because in my mind, that beach park, the Lake Geneva Beach Park, is the gem of all of our parks. It is where the people want to go. It is crowded. The pavilion is gorgeous. It is awesome. And I think that the demand at that location is only going to increase. The numbers there is only going to get more. And related to that, expand the natural park. So it's the same picture. Of course, the natural park in this case is where it says the green little significant signal, Keystone Heights Natural Park. And on the block that it is on the very north side, is a company called Florida Homes Realty and Mortgage Team. Now, this was an opportunity I feel like we really missed. That house was for sale for more than a year. And we could have gotten that for less than $200,000. And we could have expanded the park to the north. Because it's in the same area. We could have either just moved the parking lot up there and expanded the park. We could have used that for our skate park or our water park. There was so many possibilities. And, well, unfortunately, I wasn't in council at the time. But I just wanted to share those with you in case, and these are not the only two options here, but if there is an opportunity that any one of us sees, I would say, please bring it to the council, because timing is half the battle here. If we get the right timing with the right thing, we can make something special happen. So that was, my homework on vacant lots and acquisition of property.
I was kind of looking at the next two properties over from the one that you had mentioned also in my campaign. I had the impression that there was not a lot going on at these two homes. I think one was a single gentleman, and might be worth looking at, talking to him.
So you're thinking really long-term. You know, we get one of them now, maybe another one another point in time. and
Surround this guy and
Yeah,
ask him if he wants to sell snow cones.
yeah, or it could be, we're looking 20 years ahead. I don't mind planning that far ahead.
No.
I don't.
I'm really trying to be good right
Well, what do you want to say?
You made the point that we weren't even looking at talking in the past, so maybe this is the time to think about that and make it our mission to think ahead, keep our eyes and ears open, and see what comes up.
So, I personally, I went the extra credit route. I just didn't even do the homework because I figured you guys would know. I've got a property in mind. I talked to Mr. Booth about it before the meeting. It's outside the city limits, and there's a little nice note in here that says, because it's outside of the CRA area, that it exceeds the scope of our authority for this meeting. But I'll say this about it. I think all these small properties in town, I think we ought to tell them to go see what we can do, find out whether those are good grounds for parking. I think personally, I don't like the price. I'm never gonna like the price as a cheapskate on $500,000 for those 2 lots. If we could get both those lots, in some other world for 600,000, ooh, I love that idea. But, if we don't tell them to go do it, she's gonna sit. I think we ought to aggressively look at everything downtown that's left open, especially the ones for sale or vacant where we can talk, and go for it. And as far as the beach, that's gonna have to be on there. The minute there's some movement of sale, stress economy, anything, go talk to them. Just deal with it. That's my perspective, and bring it to us, because y'all have good ideas there.
Can the city, I guess purchase would be the right, would get a first right of refusal on those properties?
So I've made a couple of notes here. One, and this will be a call to our attorney, if I want to engage a realtor to help me sift through this by somebody that does this every day for a living, which I think is smart, do I have to put an RFP out? I know every realtor up and down here, so we're gonna make one happy and aggravate 10 or 11 other people we're gonna go to and ask them to sponsor something before the 4th of July. But I think we should have a realtor analyze this. Okay, I'm hearing the council, and I'd like to hear from the vice mayor as well, but I think what I'm hearing is that you guys would like to buy whatever we can. I have been engaging with a gentleman in Florida League of Cities that helps cities acquire property, and I gave him a few things to look through, and I'll talk to him about amounts that we can buy for the value of what we have in the bank and what interest rates are and all that. Certainly wouldn't want to go spend $500,000 on one property and zap our total reserves kind of deal. This can be over time. I am a firm believer, although I don't hold a Florida real estate license, that you cannot lose money on a piece of property in Florida. If they're not making any more of it, we might hit a little trimmer of a recession year, while our president's leading us through leveling the playing field, but I think we will come back out of it stronger here, especially in this area of water coming up. So that's your management. Flying at 20,000 feet. Remember, I'm just a helicopter pilot over 1,000 feet. It kind of scares me.
Yeah.
A lot of exposure.
Hypoxia is a real threat.
Now, here's my question. Now, if the city buys a piece of property outside of city limits, wouldn't that make it city limits?
If we are adjacent to a border of the city, we could annex it into the city. But we have to touch the city somewhere.
So it's already got to come down the line on the other side.
Exactly.
Mr. Booth, the
Well,
one
that's
that I
commercial.
asked you about, is that?
Commercial circle, that'd
Yeah,
be easy.
that's what I'm thinking.
So commercial circle.
Yeah, some of it is city, isn't
Oh,
it?
right, it is.
Well, I don't know if it's.
It's funny.
It's funny,
It
because
is, it's
most
really
of those
weird.
businesses are in the city.
Yes.
I'm not, but,
All right.
Brooklyn boys are.
Brooklyn Boys
Brooklyn
is.
Boys is the last piece of property that is in the city limits.
Yeah, so Stones is not, right?
Stones is not.
So I had two brick and mortars that one is at 160 Southeast Lawrence Boulevard, Santa Fe Electronics. Graylin Tanner Rice is the owner. She's already approached Charlie and I about asking us to buy it. I think you said it's around 2,400 feet or so. So we're talking brick and mortar, which is kind of great when you think about vacant land you're gonna have to build, and that's gonna be additional cost, depending on what you do with it. I wanna say she was around 350, right, Charlie?
Yes, ma'am.
And you said it was around, and that's right smack in the middle of downtown. I mean, it's a great location. I don't know exactly what we want to use it for, but I think it's open. And then also 330 South Lawrence Boulevard, which was the previous Crossroads Christian Bookstore Cafe. I wanna say you said the rent was around $2,000, $2,500 a month, something like that.
So that,
But
they
I don't know
own
if they
that
sell-
entire
Oh,
building.
okay, so it's Suite A and B, I think.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah,
So
this is Suite A.
the people that own it, rent to the hair salon. They were renting to the Christian bookstore. I'm gonna say somewhere between $450 and $500 would be the ask. What they were looking for was somebody to rent the side that was most recently the bookstore for like $1,400 a month.
Oh, okay, so 1,400. I couldn't remember what you said. just think that also is a critical little location. It's decent space, I'm not sure what it could be used for. I mean, who knows, maybe that could be where the museum goes, I don't know.
Well, either of those that you buy, we can rent to retail, we can make a museum, we could move, put some temporary walls up, move everybody down, make this a museum and rec center. There's all kinds of ways that all could happen.
Mhm. Yeah, and you know, the other piece is the 2 lots that we own, just so everybody hears it, and something I looked into last year, and I'm gonna continue to look at it, is that we own already on Magnolia, and part of it, is the reason I know so much about that piece that's right behind Pinch a Penny, is it's 0.19 acres that we own, which I felt like could be a parking lot of some sort, maybe 10 to 20 cars, I don't know. I know each parking space is around 190 square feet based on the information that I have. And the other piece is across the street. Now, both of these are just sitting there vacant. And so we have that 0.39 acre, which is where the pole barn is, which is in incredible condition. The lot is completely paved. The building that's basically kind of fallen apart, it looks like it's fallen apart, is sitting on top of a concrete slab. So the beauty of that is, if that potentially becomes the museum, the girls love that building, to renovate it, whatever. I do have a friend who will take a look at it for me and give me some input on what he thinks it would cost to do bare minimum, you know, keeping it rough looking, but you know, it's gotta have AC, it's gotta have new roofs, gotta have sides all the way around it. It does have an enclosed office, it's air conditioned and a bathroom. But in potential down the road, if we decide to add pop-up retail, which I've talked about for a while now, that's an ideal place that you could do, and it becomes like a shopping marketplace area with the museum there, and then the pole barn can be used for revive the farmers market that I understand disappeared around 2017. That again, and also craft fairs, things to that nature. Make use of that space, which is basically walkable from downtown. You know, we talk about the new signs and all we want to do, directional signs. That's exactly what the other cities do. They have these nice decorative signs that says around the corner is the marketplace, you know, and you just kind of follow it, you know, when it's designed that way. But those are 2 assets that we already own that we could make happen, I think. Worst case scenario, if that building costs $100,000 to redo it, I'm not sure it's really worth that. I know for sure you can go buy one of those sheds finished that looks great, can be very cottagey looking, very old timey looking, for around $35,000 to $40,000 finished. So I don't know. It's just ideas that I think we should capitalize on the spaces that we already have. And I'm all open to anything that we look at, we could buy that we could afford. Because you were totally correct.
So if I could push us toward action, that would be, what do we think the CRA should go after now? You know, we have lots of possibilities, but we need to give them some concrete.
Sure.
What should we go after now?
Well, you guys give your input and I'll give mine.
I think you've identified a number of small, relatively inexpensive parcels that could be used for parking. Pretty easy. And I think if we've learned anything, we've learned that if we see an opportunity, we need to jump on it. If it's something that we think we need in the foreseeable future. So I'd like to see us go ahead and pursue those. To look at the more expensive properties, I think we need to decide what we want to do. Do we want a city hall annex anytime soon? Do we want or need that, or do we?
I would say let's not talk about how we use the property yet. Because
Okay.
there's so many different things we could do. Let's see what kind of properties we can get first.
Right.
One
And
second.
then look at what we already have, look at what we can get, and now use all that information to decide what to do.
Get something and then figure out what to do with it?
Yes,
Okay.
that's
And I
what
guess
I
to
would
the
do.
point, you're not gonna lose money on it, so that's not a bad approach.
Right.
I do like the idea of expanding the beach and, kind of nudging the edge of the beach eastward.
Okay.
Well, if you expand the beach, would that not take care of some of the crowding issues we have? Would we have a building sitting there unless we just bulldoze it?
I couldn't hear part of what you were saying.
I'm sorry, if we expand the beach, we buy that property, wouldn't that take care of some of the overcrowding potentially? I mean, are we gonna bulldoze the building too? The house?
Well, unless we can use it for something. Do we wanna rent some of that space to the t-shirt sales and snow cones and whatever?
Again, I don't think we should decide.
Well, sure, but
Okay.
I'm just kind of
Gotcha.
throwing that in.
Okay, to your point, let's
we gotta
get
put
it
it
where
in
we
the-
can and then we'll figure it out.
Right, because there's a myriad of possibilities.
Yes. And they don't, the first solution doesn't have to be the forever solution. If we want to sell snow cones for a couple of years and figure out what's next.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's just my favorite example.
Yeah, maybe it becomes our small community center. I
There
don't
you
know.
go.
You know,
Uh-huh.
I just,
Youth activities.
yeah, I mean, there's
It's
so
kind
many
of ideal.
possibilities.
I really like the idea, and I guess this is getting ahead of ourselves again, Dan, but kind of a center of activity, like you were saying, but also because City Hall's here, let's kind of build around that, or if we wanna.
You got the
move that someplace
basketball
and
court,
have
tennis
a
courts, you got
Yeah.
the beach, you got the jungle, the Geneva jungle. I
Mhm.
mean, that could be the perfect.
Mhm.
Just
Mhm.
throw it out there, but,
Kind of a
but until we get
activity
the
center.
property, we really can't.
Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah.
I got you.
And it's not too hard to find out about the status of the properties, just go on property search, pull up the city, the zip code, pull up specific addresses, and you can go look at all the history of who's owned it, who currently owns it, their names. You can find out how to contact them, it's pretty simple really.
And
to
a
get-
realtor would be really helpful.
They would,
Mhm.
I'm just, that's what I do, I wanna find, like, when I was looking at our property, I was trying to understand in my mind how it would work, my idea, so.
I'd say that's a good, let's look for maybe the cheaper property or something, but my whole thing is spending money and everything. You're gonna remember how many times I harped about, let's get these tennis courts done and that, it's safety, somebody's gonna get hurt. We need to get that done, and you need to get it done. I've been talking about it over a year. I know we have all these things we had to do and everything, but it's taking forever. And the other safety thing that's on here that's been put on is the crosswalks. The flashing light, nobody pays attention. We need to put pavers there, there's other things you can do that it stands out. Just me, 4 times, almost got hit.
I think those flashing lights.
Somebody's
are
gonna
good.
get killed, and then, I've been talking about this for a year, it hasn't been done. We need to do something.
It's a state highway and you have to work through
Well,
DOT.
then we have to, let's do something,
They
Can't
did
just say,
that.
well, it's the state's
Well,
fault.
we didn't even have the flashing lights, well, you know.
Well, I know that, but,
And this
I
was
mean-
supposed to fix the problem, but
Right,
it hasn't.
I'll have a car stop, me and my girlfriend and my dog were walking across,
Yeah,
and comes a car right, I touched it.
yeah, yep, you told us.
Can we send a letter on behalf of the city council to the sheriff or somebody and ask them to send somebody from the law enforcement down here to try and police that a little better?
Well, that's not, we need to do something to fix that.
Yeah,
People don't realize.
I think those flashing
Until we
lights
get it
will
done,
more prominent.
until we get it done, so that-
This is probably not a popular idea, but you could put cameras up.
oh,
Yeah, but that's
And
still.
you can catch people and you could ticket them.
Yeah.
That'll-
Still,
that-
just
that'll-
need to, it
that'll
needs to be
help.
more visible, because everybody that blows through it doesn't realize it's a crosswalk. Because all you have is the flashing lights.
And even
You
those
go
are
down to
always
Gunmelon and stuff like that, you see how they have their crosswalks marked. We're getting more and more popular here.
True.
More and more people
Yeah,
coming
absolutely.
across, more and more cars are going down the road.
I walk that area too, and I've seen, when they have the karate classes and martial arts, I've seen some kids come really close to, ending about 100 feet down the road. And it's pretty ugly.
Well, I think we should ask our city manager to
And then
engage.
maybe let the Lake
DOT.
County, folks give us input on what they would recommend. You hear about all these stories where there's a school bus stopped and the sign's out, and you have cars passing the bus on Highway 100. I just saw this last night.
I mean, we have an
And
18.
very blatantly, doesn't matter. And so you hear about these situations, and beyond putting cameras, I don't know what else you can do. They get a few tickets because it's like the cameras they put in the green code. It picks up your tag, you're gonna get a ticket in the mail, and we don't have any power over it. It's what it is. I would hate to have to go that far, But I mean, I understand what y'all are saying. I mean, we're becoming a very walkable town. I mean, we're already walkable, but I think it's gonna increase as folks start going more to this beach, which is now staying really crowded, it seems like. And people walking into town to go have lunch or whatever, and we wanted to maintain its safety throughout. So maybe they can give us some ideas on how can we better enforce it.
So what I've jotted down here is I'm gonna engage FDOT and Clay County Sheriff to see what we can do to better police people's adherence to the crosswalks and the flashing lights.
And it's not like it's a huge area. I mean, it's like from that corner of 121, pretty much to here, essentially.
Basically.
And, you know, I think we have to do something to see what they can tell us.
What kind of revenue would we get off cameras? Does anybody know, are they pretty profitable?
The camera is more.
Yeah, I don't know.
I sat through a lot of Green Coast Urban City Council meetings, and there were lawsuits. Orange Park has them too. The state statute is a little, you have to have a policeman look at every, ticket, I guess is the best way to say it.
Photo violation.
Every
Violation, yeah. Otherwise,
violation.
there's lawsuits, there's been a lot of lawsuits. A lot of cities have gotten, like Jacksonville stopped doing it because they couldn't keep up with it. Green Coast Springs, I think, still has one.
Yeah.
It was they were originally getting a good, lot of funding, they were getting a lot of funds. It reduced because they happened to have an officer look at every one, your percentage of gains of the tickets. And you don't have a police department, they do have their own police department.
I think it'd be interesting to know how many of it is people just going through our town versus people who actually go through.
Yeah.
That just avoid and ignore those flashing lights. You know what I mean? Because just think about it, we're kind of a go-between between
Right.
getting to Gainesville or to
Yeah.
Greenville, right?
Or the stop is slowed down to 15
Yeah,
miles an
ours-
hour, and then everybody will go around.
Yeah.
I think Orange Park has been the
Thought
most
about that as
successful
well.
with their, and I'm not
I've
sure.
been thinking about this, but that's all.
So you don't know that we could make it up on volume, is what you're saying, as far as.
You have to have, my understanding, the last lawsuits, where you have to have a police officer look at them before you actually issue the ticket.
Okay, so from that side, it's not gonna be cost
Right,
effective.
right. The other thing I was gonna tell you, is catch-22. I'm not saying don't buy properties for parking and things that you're gonna increase things, increase uses in the town, that's gonna increase your CRA. But don't forget, the whole idea of the funding you get from CRA is from tax revenues. Yours matched with the county's. Every time you take property off the tax rolls, you're losing, you don't have that CRA funding anymore, so that, the other thing, and so you gotta be careful, if it's gonna help, if you're gonna create a parking lot that's gonna create a better business, or if you're gonna do it so you can sell it to a business, that's one thing. But you gotta make sure that as you take property off the tax rolls, which every time you purchase a property, that's what's happening, you gotta make sure that you're balancing appropriately. The other thing, and I was looking to see, I don't know what we don't have a budget, so it doesn't really matter, I'm state, but I know the city has used before, because I think the property across the street, there's Florida Communities Trust property, a program, as well as Land and Water Conservation, which is the FDEP program, that for instance, any property that you're gonna help, to expand the beach, that parkland, you probably would rate pretty high. The FCT is if I remember, it's been a couple of years since I've applied for one, but they're normally like 75-25, but because you're a small city, I think you get 100%, you don't have, it's like no match, it used to be, it's, I don't wanna tell you, because I haven't looked at the guidelines recently, but I know that there's a sign across the street, so I know you've used it, the Florida Community Trust property.
We did.
And as well as Land and Water Conservation, there is a 50% match, but, so you could match CRA monies if it implements your plan, to go after these grants. They take longer, but the FCT is what they call a willing seller property, so to apply, you just have to have the owner, when you apply apply is willing to sell. They don't have to sell, you don't have to get that money yet. And then if you get funded, then FCT basically takes the process through, they have to do, appraisals and things like that, so, but you can get, like, those properties close to the beach, I would think those would be would qualify very highly in a grant to go after it, so that's just something to think about.
That would put those properties into conservation though, wouldn't they?
Conservation, you have to do a management plan on what you're gonna use, you can use the house as a museum, you get extra points for that kind of stuff, yeah, I mean, it will put it in conservation, but then it could not be developed, you have to do conservation easement on.
So
You limit your future use of that.
Right, like,
at that point, you can't put a food truck on it, you can't put farmer's market, anything that makes money.
yeah, you can, because I'm having to deal with this in marine land, because they have FCT property, you have to report it on your annual reporting, and if it's not like tons and tons and tons of money, they let you do it, and whatever even if you lease like that food truck, you're gonna add to the space, as long as you use that money for the park, for your maintenance of that park, it's fine. You just have to reuse it for the park property.
And that expanded my understanding.
That is great news.
Right, yeah, so it's not like you can't you just have to report it, but you have to show that the money that you are receiving for,
From the
an
vendors.
outfitter or something like that, that you're using it back into the park, which is very easy to do, because obviously, you have, maintenance, you gotta mow the lawn, all that stuff is done, so that's all, as long as you put it back in the park, it's fine.
Gotta groom the beach.
And as long as it's not like, somebody's making $1 million off something or something, but they're not gonna do that, but they know, like, Marine Land does a lot of weddings, and they get like a couple $100. We have to report the $100 that they get as an application fee for the people that do the weddings on the beach, and then we have to get how much I think there's a run, like how much money, that we had a run that made $2,500, but it went to Whitney Lab. You just have to report it, they don't do anything about it, they just report it. So, so you can do that kind of stuff, but I would think that any of the properties related, assuming the legislature funds it, we don't know what's gonna be funded until next month. And usually applications, it takes a process, it takes about a year to do the application, go through the form, but if you wanna buy those properties, I would think they would rate pretty high, because based on my previous experience and the things that you're gonna get points for.
So what's the process if we decide to move food trucks across the street? So we can,
First, you have to be
Amp
up to
up
date. You have to be up to date first.
what?
Is your management plan not up to date?
We're working on it.
Okay. Once your management plan is, I'm dealing with that in Marine, I've been going through the Marine Land, because basically, that's what we wanna do, is be able to have somebody, you have to report it. But yes, you have to add it to your management plan, just like we have to add it to our CRA plan, you have to add, the problem is these management
And
plans.
this one is not complete yet, so if this one's not complete from what we had before, we probably should complete that before we start another one, or maybe they can be done simultaneously. There's some research that needs to be done.
Right, we can check, but the thing about it is the key again, is food trucks weren't anticipated when you did your management plan probably 10 years ago, or more, 20?
1999.
Okay, so
Let's
nobody
not
thought.
get into that.
Right. So nobody thought about food trucks. Once you get your plan up to date and you've amended to add food trucks, then you can do it. That's what we're having to do.
Right, and I'm not so sure, I'm sure you can amend it, but I don't know what that looks like because of how that plan is written.
Yeah, but you can. I'm going through that in right now, so I know you
So,
can.
this is wonderful. I want to get back to what actionable thing does this council want to give to our city manager? I mean, I love what we're talking about.
Answer the question, do we have what was the term, willing seller?
Well, I would,
Is that-
you need to think of properties, and then when the grant cycle opens, part of that, you have to have him sign, or her, whichever, the owner sign a letter that they're willing to sell. And if they are, then you go through the process.
Okay.
That's it,
But that could be months or a year.
Always, yes, it's a year process.
When is the grant cycle for this?
this.
I don't, it usually opens up sometime in the fall, just because
Okay.
it's having legislative funding, but we'll have to see. I couldn't find it, I looked quickly on the website,
Okay.
but we could call our new person. Nobody likes Northeast Florida. We are the revolving, FCT person. I think as long as I've been working with different communities I've been at FCT, I probably have 10 different ones. As soon as they can book it to South Florida, they leave. I mean, they're still in Tallahassee, but they don't like North Florida there. It's not what I want.
So what would be our strategy with respect to the?
So to get back to what Councilman Lewandowski keeps asking for, I would propose one of you guys make a motion
Well, where's
to-
the workshop, we can't.
well,
Yeah, that's true.
or come to consensus that the next time we have a workshop, that you would like, some more information about, item C, item D, and the item just to the east of the beach property. The rest of them, I'll get with our attorney, figure out how to engage a realtor, and at least know what my parameters are on that. But those three,
I like that recommendation, what do you think?
maybe I could do that without getting in too much trouble.
No, I mean, that'd be great, and maybe even we meet again before the June 9th council meeting, and maybe we can pass a motion at that point in time to ask you to enter into a contract if we have enough data by then. I mean, that's kind of quick, but, yeah.
Our 2015 plan called for development along South Lawrence, as long as this corridor stays active. I don't have a problem, I think it's great.
And if it's outside the CRA area, we can use CIP funds. We don't have to use CRA if it's in the wrong place.
And I think with the number of properties we talked about, even the brick and mortar, it's worth finding out what makes most sense, and we have to walk before we run, and see what that looks like and what fund we would pull that from, and then, get a realtor, once Rich agrees to this, they can give us some input on each one of the properties mentioned. Then we'll kind of know what we're really dealing with here. I think when you're trying to buy a property that somebody's already living in, that's gonna be a little bit of a challenging situation, because I know the one that you are talking about, that property was just bought a couple of years ago.
It's up for sale.
You're right, so, I think, I think that should be one of the first things too, looking to see what we have with the ones we've talked about, and bring it back to us and let us figure out what we can use for what, I don't wanna just buy a lot and just sit there and look at it, and not do anything with it right away. I mean, I want to know that what we're gonna use it for.
So can I summarize? We're gonna ask the city manager to look into, with hopefully the help of a realtor in accordance with whatever laws are applicable. Item C, item D, potentially the properties on the east side of the beach. And then I think the mayor wants to add in the, old Santa Fe Electronics. I think that's what you referred to when you
There's
say the
two of
brick and mortar.
There's two of them. She mentioned two different buildings.
Well, I think it's the same building with two different businesses in it.
No, sir, the Santa Fe Electronics is one.
Yeah.
And then the one closest, that was the Christian bookstore with the hair salon on the other side, is owned by a realtor out of Jacksonville, the entire building.
Yeah,
Is that a separate building?
Yes, sir.
it's a
Okay.
set, yeah.
Are you
There's Suite
referring to
A.
both?
No, so Suite B is occupied, Suite A is the one's available.
Okay.
So it'd be a rental situation, most likely, I don't imagine that they would sell the whole thing to us.
Okay, so I'm bringing that one up and I'm asking you to do that because I get the sense that some of the council are interested in that. I'm very much against that personally. But if the council chooses to go that way, then that's the decision of the council. I want high value real estate on Lawrence to be a tax producing property.
Yeah.
I don't want it to be tax free.
Agree.
So that's why I'm against it.
But I understood Mr. Van Zant to say that we could potentially, if we held properties, that would then allow us to negotiate with the businesses or do what we wanted as far as revenue generation, if we turn buildings back around. Am I correct on that?
Right, my thought
There's
eventually
no-
would be to find a piece of property to build a city hall. But in the meantime, this council's very energetic, which is great. You've got a lot of ideas, and we're just out of space. So.
We need to help you.
I need to figure that out, what that looks like.
Yep.
I mean, I've got Mr. Bills across the street talking to his wife about cleaning out what they use for a storeroom and maybe using that for a CRA manager, project manager. I've hit up several people along here. I've explored Mike Bell's property as recently as last Friday. They're renting out the old sanctuary as a church building, but not using that middle space where they would have events and church dinners and all.
Right.
There's a couple offices in there, so I've got feelers out, but it's time. I can tell by the hour and 5 minutes we've spent, I need to figure out with Mr. Commando how to engage a realtor and what my right and left limits are.
Sounds great.
I got a question. You know the, Roberts Insurance, that parking lot, I was told once that they don't own that. The parking lots.
I believe Miss Pellerito owns that. I'm about 99% sure.
I've heard that too.
Because that would, it could be redesigned to put more parking in there, because they kinda messed it when they didn't mess it up, but when they changed the road, when they repaved the road a few years ago, 4 years ago, they took out that entrance and stuff, so it could be shaped up like that, the city owned it.
We own the parking closest to her building.
Yeah,
On the north side of the parking lot you're referring to, we just restriped those a month or 2 or 3 ago. But that internal parking lot. So what are you're proposing that, we don't own it, but you're proposing that
it would be I mean, it's already.
we figure out how to get more parking in there?
Yeah, and it need, cause it needs to be sealed or whatever, or repaved. That was my homework when I came across it.
It's good to know, I didn't know that. Yeah.
So that's, I guess, one sort
One
of
thing.
course of action.
Ask
Move on
the
up.
city manager to look into.
Yeah. Did we get come to any conclusion on what we want to do about danger to pedestrians?
I'm going to contact the FDOT and our sheriff and see how they can do anything differently on those properties. If you remember, at our last meeting, we had Chief Riggs, or Assistant
Yes.
Chief Riggs, agree to help us look into some speed calming through like a 30-day step up, or I
I
think. that's
remember that,
30 days.
yeah.
So we want people to slow down, but we also want them to stop if somebody's in the
Well,
crosswalk.
I think those two
The lights
issues
are
go
flashing.
hand in, yeah, I think
If
those two issues
we
go
took a
hand
field
in
trip
glove.
right now, I bet you we'll go across and somebody will not stop. I think-
I'm
I
sure
think-
you're right, I'm sure you're right.
I stopped for Ryan one day, so I
I would have.
Very kind.
Oh, yeah.
I said, the shoes on a different foot now.
Kind of a separate issue, but I think if we.
He hit the brake and shift gears.
Eventually, if we were to enforce the traffic, the speed limits, number one, lower them, and number two, enforce them, I think that would encourage a lot of traffic to go around.
So like a lot of those towns go down 15 miles an hour. Stop.
Absolutely, yeah.
So what I'm hearing from the council is, I think we've reached consensus that real property acquisition should remain in the draft CRP.
Yes.
All right,
Oh, that's what you're looking for.
Oh, absolutely. And what I would propose, I would think we had a really good conversation on that issue. We've got good guidance to what city staff need to look into. What I would propose is we move into discussion on the rest of these items up here in the draft, or additions, either what city council members would like to strike, or what city council members would like to add in addition for the list that we're going to try and get into the draft, or what will be eventually the 2025 CRP amendment.
Well, the only thing I actually didn't see anything because I did compare it to the strategic plan that is our draft document so far, and took the strategic plan and compared it to the draft CRP. And pretty much, the things that were in the CRP that were not in the strategic plan, and I'm talking about verbatim from the strategic plan that was a draft, The continued trailhead and trails program was not included in the strategic plan. The, continue the septic to sewer transition efforts was also not in the strategic plan. And park upgrades, meaning additional upgrades, not specifically lined out like that in the strategic plan. And the real estate property acquisition was not in the strategic plan. So when I kind of crisscrossed all the documents you gave us through the spreadsheets, I came up with my own comparison, and that's what I came up with. The only thing I wanted to add would have been to identify and create a 3-year plan for funding for existing and future plans. So, you know, we have this nice document here that shows our budget, bank accounts, see, you know, totals. And I like to kind of, like I say, forecast and look at, like, what does one thing cost? Let's just say we bought that lot, one of the lots, say it's $500,000, whatever. And then we figure out, like, when we're gonna buy that, what fund would that be from? Or would it be from a current fund, or would it be from a grant fund? You know, what is the best use of our funds versus getting a grant, which always takes longer? So that moves that idea out, right? You see what I mean?
Yes,
So
ma'am.
I
Absolutely.
think we get kind of caught up in all these little details, like, yeah, we wanna do all this, but where do we get the money to do these things? And what is the period of time we're talking about here to make this come to fruition? I am all about completing what we had already started. And, you know, we have this nice list here, project updates and what's going on currently, which a lot of this is already included in the CRA projects. You know, the whole thing with the basketball courts, and yes, you're right, we've been hearing about it forever, but honest to goodness, in the last 24 months, it's the first that I've seen official effort made into saying, we're leveling it, we're gonna make a new one. In the past, I heard we can't afford that. So that's definitely progress, I think.
Oh, that's progress.
And the guy's giving us quotes, but then it doesn't happen, so it has got to happen. And the public wants it to happen.
I'm not gonna let up till it's done.
No, I agree with you. I 100% agree with you.
I don't wanna do anything else
So
till
in
it's
my
done.
mind, you know, when I see these things that are listed that Bo shared with us at the last meeting, and you know, Jamie did as well, these to me are in motion, so to speak. I mean, for the most part, either they're done or they're in motion. Like I said, the only thing I really wanted to add was, is what does that financial plan look like? And what projects would be year 1, year 2, year 3, and where does it come from? Is it CIP, is it CRA, or is it grant?
Flesh out the plan.
Well, I think it just makes it a lot more feasible, I mean, like, attainable to me in my brain. Yeah, like realistic, instead of just
Yeah.
pie in the sky.
I think that's a reasonable thing to expect, and because that was one of the statements that I had a conversation with Mr. Booth, and I had this conversation with Mr. Van Zandt about, is that, you know, there is so much funding that's spent on planning and consulting. How many of it actually moves to bid phase, actual completion? I would, you know, just, if I had rolled the dice, I'd say we're probably hitting the 20% range, right? And that's not an indictment of you, because you've been in the transition to right the ship and to add on and build out. So I'm not, this is nothing, just to be clear for people at home, that's progress. But I think when it, you know, while it's not germane to it specifically, it is ancillary, because it speaks to the budget, it speaks to everything, and that's why I like on this list that what you're talking about, you've got it number 1 on here is A, item A on the strategic plan. And I think it ought to happen that way. We ought to know, because you're gobbling this up, but let's get the basketball courts. My kid wants to do Michael Jordan, let's do it. Let's do it.
Something visible and,
He's gonna have that,
yeah.
yeah.
Here's other things I've seen get used most. The waterfront, well, that's all safe. We got Geneva Jungle Center. That's like to say, you see 20, 30 kids in there
Oh, yeah.
every weekend. Next is the courts here. They get used, there's always people there.
All these people there,
You
yeah.
need to get it done.
Yeah, I mean, I think about stuff like that, that list to me in my brain just kind of keeps rolling, and I can't wait to see it actually happen. The whole news about across the street, huge, because I want to change the image of these small businesses in working with us. That's why we're gonna have a food truck workshop soon here in the next month or so. And, you know, that, we want those people to be part of our business here and get them engaged and be here for the community, because that park over here is gonna be packed, parking, there's not gonna be room to put them over there. So we absolutely have to find another location, and we need to change some of our, whether it's our ordinances or whatever, that demonstrates our needs today, which means more than one or two at a time. You know, to me, another thing is this whole museum thing. I know we're renting a building now to put some of their things in because it's air conditioned. That's money that's costing us. We need to look at what our options are. And how much do we really want to spend on that? Do we want to buy something already pre-existing brick and mortar and try to make it work as a welcome center and the museum? They want to keep driving this whole Chicago thing. And they just can't keep working out of these boxes and 3 or 4 different locations. It's ridiculous. And those things need to be out so people can see them. So, you know, I want to find the most economical way to do it and make it a nice venue for current people who live here and visitors. And combine it with a visitor center where we can, you know, potentially sell souvenirs and things like that, which is what I've seen in other cities. It's usually a combined effort. Friends of Keystone could totally jump into that partnership with us to support that, I think. When you say focus, I mean, that's kind of, those are some pretty big focus things there, the properties, looking at what's really truly available. And then I think once we iron that out and see what's real or not, then we kind of know what we can do this year and next year, but we keep our eyes open for the next ones that come about. And see, just make sure we have a pulse on it.
So we're hearing so what I'm hearing is the list, the add or remove, the 12 items that Jamie has in front of you. Sounds like we want to move forward with them, but we want to have a plan, a financial plan. Financial plan that says, this is what we anticipate it's gonna cost, and then this is what potential grant funds are in the CRA. Obviously CRA funds can be used, but what are grant funds? Because yes, it might take longer. Like I know, I just looked, I finally found it. FCT, I knew it was the fall. It opens in November, and it's due January. So, and then that means it gets funded, and then this next year, you know, offered out, all those grant programs, they take a year or two. But if you're getting 75% of you, or 50%, or 100% of the funding paid for, maybe it's worth the wait. I mean, that's what you have to decide. So we need to give you the options in that plan, so that you know, and you can, because you really need, I think what I'm hearing is you need that plan before you can make priorities, to prioritize it, because of the timing that it might take.
Can I ask you a question? If it's all right.
Sure.
Can CRA funds be used to annex land that is currently outside the city limits as part of a broader redevelopment plan?
CRA funds can only be used in what is your designated current boundaries
So
of the
we would
CRA.
have to so we can't, there's no way we could write that, from your understanding at all, to extend outside the current city limits or anything. We would have to annex that first.
I would think so. I'm not the attorney on that, but yes, I would think so. You cannot spend, CRA funds have to
We
be.
said as part of what I'm probably getting at is, we said part of a redevelopment of the area, of our CRA area, that we needed to annex land that was adjacent to it. That, we have no vehicle or mechanism to do that as part of this.
Now the CRA, I mean, you obviously can use your general revenue funds and other things like that. I mean, you know, you don't, the CRA funds are supposed to be for redevelopment. That's what your community redevelopment area plan is how our CRA, what's our plan for the CRA?
Yeah,
It's
I
very
understand
limited.
that, but
And
I'm
when
just-
you
I
want,
wanna
but
make sure
that's
I'm
not, yeah, that's not to say that you can't, in your overall planning of your city dollars, that you can't plan
I understand.
those things.
I would ask that specific
Yeah,
question about that.
no, not, I mean, very, very unlikely, because it has to be used in this, for the property in your CRA boundaries.
Okay.
I hate to throw water on the fire, but I don't agree with this organizational structure for our plan. And that's what my spreadsheet was that I provided each of you with.
I'm in on this too,
Okay.
so I got mine down here.
Okay. I think we should have 5 major areas and not specific projects. And they are on this sheet. And all of these things go in those 5 major areas,
Yeah,
except number 12. What I really want is for the city budget to take care of number 12.
going.
So that way, when the CRA funding is gone in 2035, we're already taking care of all the ops and maintenance in our city budget. And so therefore, when 2035 comes along, we don't have suddenly a brand new, huge expenditure that we have to deal with in the city budget. And so what I did then was I looked at our strategic plan, and I said of the 4 strategic priorities, sustainability, events, economic growth, and infrastructure, which areas do these apply to? And so that's what the X means, that they fit in with our strategic priorities. And then I looked at the 2015 plan, and I said, out of the 141 items there, where do they go? Okay, and this is not saying where we need to spend money. This would be helping us decide what are our priorities. And many of these 141, although I don't agree with all of your assessments, but many are complete. And so we could cross them off fairly easily. I think one of the things we're going to have difficulty with is deciding our priorities. Because we all come from different backgrounds, we all have different interests, we all want what's good for the city, and we have more ideas than money. And so I'm gonna throw out an idea, and that is that each of us get to say, this is the one idea we're gonna champion. And maybe there's a dollar limit on it or something. But that way, this is gonna sound very political, I'm sorry, but I just can't, that way when it comes to the end of our 3 years, and someone asks us, what did you do for the city? You know, I can say right now, I was part of the people who voted to tear down that China chef and to get that piece of ugliness out of our city, okay? But I can't say much else right now. And it would be so nice if each one of us had a champion project that we really felt strongly about, and that we could say, this is what I did, I led to help make our city better.
That's a great idea.
You know, Mom.
And that's awesome, I love it, you know, and I wanna support you on it, but you know what, I feel strongly about some things too.
Well, and I think the beauty of that is having 5 folks who are totally engaged and to do in the research on your individual focus of what you want to do and bring that, because, you know, our staff needs all the help they can get. And the input that we bring is huge, because we do have our opinion about it, but we've also got some skin in the game, you know, we're not just pointing fingers to say, go look at this, go look at that. Let's go, I wanna see it myself, I wanna have the conversation so I can talk about it, you know, educationally, like I know what I'm talking about. And I totally agree with that. I think that's the way to have the most power to make something happen sooner.
Yeah, so what we need to do, what I'm hearing, which I agree, especially depending on what our legislature ends up doing with the CRA, who knows? But instead of having more, the project will be project groups more descriptive, like we would have recreation, which could include da-da-da-da-da. We could have infrastructure that could include, so it's not 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yes.
And then have a financial plan that shows the specific projects that fit in those 5 general areas. And then what those the specific project with a plan that says, you know, if septic to sewer, we could get community development block grant funds, but it's gonna take 5 years, and these are our problems. If we wanna expand trailheads, FDOT can fund it, but it's gonna take us getting on their 5-year work program, so we know it's 5 year, at least 5 years out, and then that kind of stuff is kind of what I'm hearing.
We need to be able, you know, whether or not we wanna stay on the council, we need to be able to at least, it would help the city management team if we could explain to the public the process underway, because communication has been a problem. And then quite frankly, if you do want to run again, you want to fight about certain things, it will narrow down the fighting and it creates good continuity of government.
Well, and I think it's the information that
Absolutely.
and you can decide, well, and you can tell people, look, we're working on this, but this is the reason we haven't done this project is because we're going after this grant that's gonna pay 75 or 100% of this project, but it's gonna take us 3 years to get through the process. And that kind of stuff, but at least you have that knowledge and you can tell the public, that's why this thing is we're being stewards of your dollars, better stewards of your dollars.
And how I think this helps us immediately is it simplifies our plan. We just go with these 5 major areas and maybe use some of the stuff as examples, but it's not an exhaustive list. And it simplifies our plan and our plan is done.
Well, and I think we do need to, just because it has to stand up to a lawsuit that I don't ever want. I would say my goal is to keep my clients out of court, and I'm pretty good at it. Rich knows that. Rich and I have worked together in a lot of communities, and as well as his partners. No, but there are a lot of communities that do get themselves into trouble. Charlie probably knows terror stories if you go to your League of Cities. But what we want to do is to make sure that in our general areas, we do mention the types of projects, not specifically, but say, if we're talking infrastructure, shall include blah, 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 so that if somebody challenges it, no, it's here. We mentioned sidewalks, we mentioned streets safe. One of the things that when you talk to DOT, we want to talk about complete streets. That's a big buzzword, which is trying to roadway diets, but that's something that maybe we need to do. So those generalities under infrastructure, then somebody can't say, oh, that wasn't in your, yes it was, it's under infrastructure, these are the types of projects that it can include. Instead of saying we're gonna do a sidewalk, we're gonna do this, that gives you some flexibility moving forward.
And can I just clarify, what Janice is talking about, complete streets, you're talking about if you're gonna go in and you're gonna do a road, then you should go in and put the sewer underneath it. You should go ahead and knock out the stormwater changes, the sidewalk, just do the whole thing at once, one project. And the reason it's important is that federal grants are getting better points. If you're doing all that at once, you're more competitive for that grant.
And you're looking at pedestrian bikeways, to increase pedestrian access for bike lanes, landscaping. They're looking at the whole street instead of we're just gonna pave the road, so.
Well, then for number 5 on my list, I think I would change its title from major projects to infrastructure.
Yeah, I think infrastructure is one.
So, I'll throw this out there just so you know where my mind's at about it. On the strategic plan priorities and goals, when I saw A, B, C, D, I understand you have not voted on that. Am I correct on that?
No, you have.
The COKH 2025 strategic plan priorities and goals?
It was approved by the city council
Was
as
that in March?
amended in April.
Yes, it
Okay.
was. But I have not seen the final version with the page numbers and all that.
We've got that version over to Institute of Governments, and we're just waiting for the final confirmation
Yeah,
to
we
get it finalized.
didn't get it in Word, so we couldn't add page numbers, okay? We
Yeah,
couldn't
because
go
he
in there
created
and
a
just simply
document
add
for
it.
us, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just that final step of getting them to give us the final version
Yeah.
back.
Okay, so make sure the cover has the word draft deleted on it.
But we didn't make any final
Yes.
changes.
The version we sent back did delete the draft.
Okay.
Everything we discussed in that meeting, I went through it, I'll make sure we cross the loop.
So I'm kind of old fashioned, I think we list things in order of priorities a little bit.
That would take
So
some
I'm
time.
going to withhold comment because I was not on the council then about this strategic plan and the order of it. But, I made a little list here of yeses and nos. I only had 2 items on there that I really objected to that were not completed in 2015. Had a lot of question marks, had a few yeses. I'm gonna follow up, obviously, I wanna press that issue about how the CRA funds are used on areas right outside the city limits, because I do think there's a piece of property, while it's not completely a part of this, that could present a buying opportunity down the road for development. What we lack in town, because we don't have the space, is we lack a piece of property that has the ability to, say, create apartments, not low-income housing either, but apartments that are between, like, say, 12 to 1,500, 2,000 would be close to current development, but would be on the periphery of the city limits, where we can have, it wouldn't be obviously a big development, but it would allow something where, for those families who could figure out how to make it work, they could have a starter home, kind of a starter apartment, and then they would be able to, as they progress through their life, career, I spoke to Mr. Booth about this, then buy homes in town, and we get the kind of a stability that I think everyone desires here. Because, when you led prayer at the opening of the meeting, Mr. Van Zandt, you talked about what's pleasing to God, and I think family formation is not only pleasing to God, but also it's good for the country and the citizens. And, that's kind of on my mind, and that's why I asked you that question, because I had a conversation with Mr. Booth about that today. And so I'm gonna double check that on mine, and I hope, please double check it on yours. And the only other thing that I really have that I mentioned is when we tear up the roads, I would like us to, since they're already discussing on the planning and zoning board side, I have not spoken to anyone there, but I'd like us to take another look at the situation, whether there's some grants or funding to bury some of the lines. I think that would be a nice touch to town, give it that old timey feel you're talking about.
Talking about power.
Yeah, let's do some underground electric.
I like that.
To tag on to what you're saying, Ryan, is, and this is back 2022, I believe, before I became mayor. It was 2022 or 2021. I was at the meeting. And so Mr. Wiggins is planning to put, for better use of words, low-income housing, but he has a subdivision that will be some of that. It's a lower income to attract for the subdivision at Sunrise. That's in the works, as you probably know, because of plan and zoning. But the other complex that he has talked about, which is in the city, right behind Walgreens, or it's in between there and Rusty Gypsy, is, I can't remember how many acres that land is right there, but it was going to be like a condo type building.
Good. For
less expensive housing, exactly like what you're saying, and potentially shopping retail in there as well. He told me that, as he refers to, you don't want to use the word high rise here too much, because a lot of folks get really upset about that, and they don't like the name apartments either. I faced that even,
condos.
Oh my goodness, like some of the response when, it was even brought up a couple of years ago, it was not nice. But every community has that challenge. And so, he told me that it would take up like 1 acre, I want to say it's like 50 acres or something, it's a fair amount of land back there. And it would be like no more than 3-story, but it'd be like condo, it'd be very well done, with parking and all there, kind of away from the 21, sitting back. And then he did say he was looking at doing retail and connecting sidewalks that would connect to downtown, which I love the idea. I said, it's all about how you package it, And we do have a need for that, because we don't have any rentals really, it's almost impossible.
Yeah.
And, we don't really have any land that we could even consider, or even a builder could come in here and really do anything much with. So I don't know where he is with that plan, but
He hasn't
that's what he
mentioned
shared
that.
with me about a year ago.
The Sunrise we're working on, and that'll be coming before you sometimes pretty soon. But I have not heard anything about that one. But there's legislation which they tweaked again, is the Live Local Act, where promote affordable housing, where if you want to use if you want to have, I think it's 30 or 40%, I forget, they keep changing it, of your units to be affordable housing. You can basically go in any property, you don't have to go through rezoning. You go straight to development if you use the Local Act. So, and it allows your highest density in your community. It's got a lot of questionable things, but that's where it's at. But yeah, getting back to the CRA, I don't mean to be, just trying and James. So we're going to come up with a generalization, a plan that has more paragraph instead of, in my mind, I'm thinking that it'll be a paragraph of those with a point, infrastructure, and it will include blah, 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 blah. And then we'll also have a look at us coming up with a 3-year feasibility study of individual projects and how they could be funded, what our current estimate is, and so you have some dollars to be for the plan itself. Is those 5 categories or 4 or 5 where we can come up with of generalities with kind of in word, not a point, but more like, infrastructure will include streetscape, the general categories that Commissioner Lewandowski, is that what I'm hearing, so we can move forward?
Do we want to say what we want to own, so to speak, and as far as like what you just mentioned on the strategic plan, each one of us take one of these buckets
Well,
and
No.
look into it, no?
Well, I would think we're trying to zero in on, this is a CRA board meeting, even though you are council, and you're this council and CRA board, which gets kind of a little bit muddy, but we're supposed to be talking about CRA stuff. So the strategic plan is more the council, when you're sitting, even though they're the same people, you gotta be sitting as the council to talk about the strategic plan. I mean, you can use that, because that obviously is your input to the CRA plan, but I would think that that should be another workshop, but I'll put that over to Mr. Van Zandt.
Madam Mayor, I would even put that in with our budget workshop, because it is very tied to money.
So we could do it at that time.
I think that those
I mean, I
things
know
work well
that-
together.
I'm trying to understand Councilman Lewandowski's recommendation, and I wanna make sure he has, concurrence from the rest of you guys. Sir, are you asking to take 141 projects, whittle it down to 5, and each of you have one of the 5 that?
No.
Okay.
No, it just, as our city planner said, basically 5 paragraphs, 1 paragraph for each of the areas, changing number 5 to infrastructure. I would ask that somewhere in the plan it say, we are not disallowing anything off the 2015 plan. That's all included.
That, when you adopt a new plan, you're adopting a new plan. You can't.
Okay, you can't say we're adopting all that?
Well, no, well, I think we can make it broad enough that I can't think of anything that's in the 2015 that will not, I could get creative in writing.
So-
That's what I said.
Can I-
Yeah, because there's a lot of duplication.
Right.
Some numbers
right.
there right quick. Can you make a Y column, an N column, and a question mark? And I'll just give you some numbers off that 2015 list. For yes, 11, 18, 20, 22, 27, 32. For no, 77 and 117. For question marks, that means I'm not committal either way. They can go in it, not go in it. It doesn't have to be. 15, 23, 38. Some of these may be listed as no or completed, but I'm saying that we can still take action on them. So just, that's why it's question mark. So again, 15, 23, 38, 41, 53, 59, 66, 72, 73, 74, 83, 84, 88, 103, 104, 116, 121. And that's all for me.
Let's go back to 83, 84, and then I got
Yes.
104, 116.
Okay, add in 88,
88.
and then you have 103, 104, 116, and 121.
So here's
This-
what I'm worried about, is that if we don't reference the 2015 plan, we're gonna forget things, or we're gonna consider them complete. For example, one of the things is to say, hold the Chautauqua. We call that complete, we held the Chautauqua. Now, does that mean we don't do it anymore? I don't want us to forget that. And so if it's not in the plan, how do we make sure we don't, I mean, that's an easy one. But there's other things in the plan that are listed as complete that will be forgotten if we don't have it written down somewhere.
But a CRA plan, a community redevelopment area plan, is projects that you want to do.
It's forward looking.
This is
It's
going
forward looking, not looking back. It's not, so therefore, if you've done something, instead of listing particular things, you would say events, you know, those events can include, you could say such as da-da-da-da-da. That's not all-inclusive, but, you know, that's, I mean, to me, and I've read a lot of CRA plans, that CRA plan, the 2015 one, was a wish list.
Yeah.
And it's very hard as, for you as a council, as staff, to figure out what you really want done. Let's just put everything out there. You gotta be a little focused. And the reason that if you do the paragraphs, I think with Councilman Lewandowski, the idea is it gives you flexibility. I can tell you Marineland, a lot of times, well, can we do this? Well, we have marina, so if we're upgrading the marina, because they own the marina. If we do anything that upgrading something to keep the marina in a current, like upgrading the electric, they're upgrading the electric. that's allowed, because we said marina improvements. But now that's a problem. We didn't think about marine, that we had to upgrade the electrical, but now we do. But it's fine, because it can be funded, because we said upgrades to keep the marina, you know, in current working condition. So
Okay,
that's
so-
what I'm saying, you don't have to list electrical, but you can say, yeah, that's, and you, if you listen to our minutes, you will hear us say, the attorney and myself say, yeah, and I'll read where in the plan, that it's counted. So, you know, as long as you have those paragraphs,
So you wouldn't phrase it as continue this or that, you would say,
Now, we need to do
here's a
it
new effort.
yeah, so, it,
So I have a very, very different opinion, but let me offer this as a compromise. Without a list, I don't feel like I'm making progress. I need to check things off. And small things, big things, I wanna check them all off, one by one. And if you give it to me generically, I don't really know if I'm making progress. However, under the CRA structure, under the funding rules, I'm being persuaded that your way is the way to go, okay? I still don't want my list to go away. So I'm thinking perhaps we keep this list on the city side of things, not in the CRA bucket, and then we continue, we make a list of things that are complete. I mean, we take item 78 or whatever it is, and we put it at the bottom of the list. Item 78 is no longer on the list because it's done. But item 142, we add. Item 143, we add. And we do it in the city, and we keep track of things, because from 2015 to now, until we asked for Jamie to go look at this, nobody kept track of what we actually did. Nobody, for 10 years.
and that's why your budgeting process, this is your plan to do your annual budget and your 5-year capital improvement budget, et cetera, because those are the specific projects that are being funded, and then you can have a plan, this is how long it's gonna take us to do it, or whatever. But yes, you wanna show success, there's no question about it, that, you know.
I love checking things off.
Yes, no, that's wonderful, but you don't need it to be, you can keep it somewhere else, it does not need to be in your plan, so your plan is easier readable.
So that's the compromise
Yes.
I think I'm asking.
And really, in reference to your checking it off, like, for example, the Chicago was done this year for the first time. If you go into the strategic plan, it's clearly written there that we learned the lessons for what we did this year, so we can plan for next year. It's not going away. They're gonna continue to do it. So I tend to look at this strategic thing as a bigger, more specific following, because it really incorporates pretty much everything we've talked about, including that's in all these documents that I looked at. Because I went through and checked off each one as I went through it, and beyond the ones that are already so-called completed, and then I looked at it again to be sure. But I do think that we captured in a very specific, simple way when we did the strategic plan, because it is very, very, very specific. And the wording was done that way so that we did exactly like what you're saying. Because there's the way, it's all about the way you word it. So one word can mean 6 things. It's just a matter of the way you word it.
And the other thing, why, if it's concise like that, if you have a developer that's coming in and wants to develop, and redevelop a property in your CRA, if he sees, okay, I'm doing this will fit in, he's not reading the 112, the 100 whatever pages, to items, but he can say, oh, I wanna do this, and I'm gonna come to you and see if you will help me get this project, because I see this as one of your goals.
I have a question. You mentioned the developer. Now, I've been talking about kind of around, you know, ideas outside the city of development that we can do. I'll just be honest, the Hitchcock area where Hitchcock's is located, I think it's a life support. I think we ought to be looking at getting that area somehow if we can. Might not be feasible, but, you know, I'm gonna just throw it out there for an open meeting. I can say it where everybody can hear it. Whatever happens with that property, once we did that, I think it'd be a great kind of button up the city limits right there. But do we need to reference, because you've been mentioning the legal liability within the CRA itself, do we need to make references to quality of life or things that might kind of give guidance to the planning and zoning and others as we review ordinances and zoning codes and all that? Do we need to reference any of that? Like, as far as the goal of the city is to promote families, and, you know, do we need to go to that level in that case? I get the macro overview, but do we need to put specific references where if you don't want a certain developer in here, that we have a leg to stand on if it goes down that road.
That would be in your comprehensive plan, which you're gonna be going through your comprehensive plan update, as well as your strategic plan. I would, those.
So we don't
those-
need anything to the CRA regarding that at all, we're okay?
No, I would not recommend it, that's.
Okay.
Just for vocabulary purposes, the property off a commercial circle is often referred to as the Fox Run property because that's the road that leads into there. It's also referred to as the property behind Brooklyn Boys. And that is huge. It was originally owned by Templeton, so that's sometimes called the old Templeton property. And so there's a lot to be done. And was it about a year ago, Joe Templeton came with each of us. I think you and I were the only ones that are still on council. And he actually asked us, what would we like to see there? Because there's going to be a commercial area inside that property. It's so large. And so I'll just share with you what I said, and that is, I go way outside of Keystone Heights for all of my medical stuff. I don't do medical here. And so what I'd really like to see is some kind of quality medical facility to be on that property as the commercial entity. He's also the owner of the Sunrise property. Now, of course, that's the one that's much further along. And I will share with you also, my mother-in-law used to represent most cities in northern Florida. Maybe you even know her, Janie Coleman. She worked for Waste Management, and she sold garbage services to cities all over North Florida. That was her sole job, intersect and talk with. And she said, now this was a few years ago, but she said that any property that is sold for less than $130,000 is a typical drain on city resources. And any property that sells for more than $130,000 is a revenue generating piece of property. So as we look at what kind of properties come into our city, we may want to keep that in mind. These are generalities. I'm sure there's differences, and times have changed and inflation has occurred, but it is something to keep in mind about what kind of tax base do we want to have here.
Can I ask you a question? As far as, is economic development's been in the plan and the strategic plan? Both the CRA plan in 2015 and this. I know Georgia Tech had done a study years ago. They knew for every, say, like $1 million worth of industrial construction, it created so many jobs in the area, depending on how it was bid. Are there any studies like that that have been done recently in Northeast Florida that could quantify if we have development for every how much is built, how many jobs? Is anybody doing that?
The biggest problem Clay County has always had is it used to be 70 or 80%, and hopefully it's less for Clay County. That's the number of people that live in Clay County that work in Duval County. And it used to be like 70 or 80% of the people, of the residents of Clay County that work in Duval. You probably have here, you have a good number that work in Alachua County even.
Yes.
And that's the biggest problem in Clay County, because I'll never forget, somebody did a white paper of downtown Jacksonville, and the benefit of why you want to invest in a downtown area is those high-rise buildings in downtown, they generate a lot of tax dollars, but they don't drain a lot. There's no school that they give school taxes. There's no, they generate a lot of tax revenue, and unfortunately, commercial properties and industrial, all business properties generate more tax dollars, but that has been the continuing problem in Clay County that they've been working for years and years, and not as long as I've been involved in Northeast Florida, is trying to increase the number of jobs in Clay County. St. Johns County has the same problem, because unfortunately commercial little mom and pop shops are great, and they're important, and you've got a lot here, but they're not the major tax generators for revenue, for economic development.
Yeah, because most of them go in Gainesville to the bigger towns around. So,
Yeah, anyway.
Mr. Williams currently owns Sunrise
Oh,
subdivision.
yeah.
And that's gonna, depending on what gets approved, minimally, it's gonna be about 54, 55 home sites, giving us about another 150 residents total in the area. And if he does this other property, it's gonna probably add another 100 or 200 maybe, depending on how it's done.
He's applied for
But those are
rezone.
all in the city.
Just, and I can tell you this, even though we're CRA, but since you're bringing him up, but he has submitted to my, it's not to me, it's public information, because he submitted an application to the city. But he is looking at redoing his PUD, which are gonna be coming before you in the next couple of months. But, and you can't give me anything more than that, I'm telling you information, please don't discuss it.
Yeah,
Rich would have my neck, but there has been an application submitted to amend the PUD to increase the number of units that was originally approved by the other property owner that he purchased it from, including some townhomes. So that is what you'll be seeing in the next couple of months coming before you.
That's part of the comprehensive plan.
No, that's a project he submitted individually, that has nothing to do with the comprehensive plan.
Right.
He's applied for PUD to PUD rezone.
Right, but the comprehensive plan does land use.
Yes, the comprehensive plan has a future land use map that he has to
Yes.
comply with, yes.
Right.
Yes, but he's,
Yeah, this subdivision's been in the works
Yes,
since I've lived here almost. I
yeah,
mean,
it's
Mr.
compliant,
Johnson owned it
yeah,
initially.
and I think it's compliant with stuff, but anyways, we need to get back to CRA, I just didn't want us to, I know you mentioned that, but that is important. Part of this will be coming before you, but, you know, so I think we have our marching orders.
Yeah, and I'll summarize.
Yeah.
I think what I'm hearing is general consensus to shift the draft 2025 plan amendment to the 5 focus areas proposed by Councilman Lewandowski, with number 5 changed, the language changed to infrastructure, as opposed to these. Will likely a lot of what's here subcategorized underneath the 5. Along with, and I just want to confirm, there's general consensus from the board on removal of operation and maintenance number 12 to just sit underneath general funding activity in the future. And then along with that redraft, addressing the mayor's request for kind of like a timeline and financing plan of what would be some of the sub-element projects underneath these priority areas as part of that draft document.
Yeah.
Would be the moving forward coming out of this. And then whatever our next meeting is, potentially or in the future, the council members or the board members indicating particular priorities there, that they want to make sure that the redevelopment agency is focusing on to make sure that 5 priorities are getting done that address board members or council members' individual concerns to make sure that we're getting after them, and that's probably more in that prioritization effort. And we're not looking at getting to, I don't think we get to today, but we can address in a future meeting. Is that an accurate summary of trying to get to what are the priorities that are drafted into the next round of?
I would try to stay away from priorities as much as possible in the CRP.
We're not,
Not-
yeah,
yeah, not in the
we're not,
plan. I
yeah, we're
agree.
not.
Yes, sir. I
That's
understand.
what, I think that comes in with your budgeting.
Good.
That's gonna come,
Yes.
you're gonna do your CRA plan, when we come up with that, the 3-year plan is part of your budgetary process. You're gonna do a budget for your general fund and all your other funds, but you're also gonna have to, this board is gonna have to recommend to the council that's gonna ask to also adopt a CRA budget at the same timeline.
And I want to pile in support for the mayor's idea of a 3-year budgetary outlook as well as next year. I think that's a great idea.
For best.
3-year programming, 1-year
Yeah.
budgeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that.
And knowing like which buckets. So really then it helps us have a little bit more accountability on whatever projects we decide to try to own. Gives us what's right now, and what's down the road, kind of time to gather that pertinent information.
Well, and it gives us as council
And-
members more options.
Right.
If I can only have a 1-year project, then it's gonna limit what I choose.
Right.
But if I know my project might take 3 years, I might choose a different project.
Absolutely.
So, just to be clear, we talk about budget, we're not talking just about CRA budget, we're talking overall budget. Alright, yeah.
Yeah.
I would like, as part of the budget plan, to include not just the 3-year, because I think we all we talked about that last meeting too, but I would like to see us include setting up or having distributions to several contingency funds, both for operating and for large acquisitions or larger projects. We need, if we've got to have 25% matching towards it, we need to build up a reserve, because, you know, that, you know, I'd like to see us have a fund sitting with $1 million in it somewhere ready to roll. Well,
And that's the idea, I think, because of the way, the bank accounts are lined up.
yeah.
I think we kind of know what we can do with what, and then the other part would have to go to grants, obviously.
Yeah.
That doesn't fit into that category.
But I want to make sure we have.
Capability.
I want to make sure that we have that budgeted in the budget to redirect those funds, and including up to a year of a rainy day fund if we do have a significant recession at some point, which, you know, whatever. But that way, we don't have to worry about staffing, we don't have to worry about anything. We give ourselves a cushion of time with maybe, hopefully, a year and a half, 2 years. I'm not saying we don't already have that, but I want to make sure that I say that out loud.
No, sir, you are uniquely qualified to help me with that, and I'd like to ask that between now and June 9th, we moved our meeting from 2nd to 9th, you and I get together, and by June 2nd, have some drafted language that council can actually act on, give me some direction. I've always kind of informally looked at that bank account list and looked at the checking accounts as, you know, available cash, and the CDs as reserves. That if we wanted to find that, I'm all for that. We just need to frame it out. I think it is right for a fine-tuning process there. I'm not against that at all.
The
Put a fence
reason,
around it.
the reason I say that is because, you know, we have to budget down to the penny where we're directing those funds. And I think that sometimes muddies up the water for when we get a whole list. We have to almost build out a list to say, I'm putting this money here, whether or not we actually use it. Then we got to go back and redirect, and it's a streamlined process. We know, and then when you want to pull that trigger on something, you can do it.
Agree.
I'll continue on just quick summaries of what I took away. Going back to earlier in the workshop, acknowledging sewer and water requests for information on number of residences on sewer, also on water, commercial properties on sewer, commercial and water, wastewater treatment plant capacity, can it handle 420 additions? And when would CCUA potentially have the capacity to handle that in the future in their infrastructure plan in the future? I grabbed all that together and said, I'll roll this together and request to CCUA leadership for them to come and give us a briefing to just address these and whatever other questions the council may have. And I'll work with them to get that scheduled either onto either a city council brief or maybe a 5:30 CRA briefing.
I would not recommend
City
CRA because you got residents outside the CRA.
Yeah.
So you need to do that as a
I see
council.
what you're saying, you're right, thank you.
It needs to
it's
be
city
a regular
briefing.
council
Yep.
workshop or council meeting, yeah.
Yep. And, let's see, keep moving down, I may miss some. We'll work on the staff side of addressing crosswalk signal violations, either with the sheriff or with FDOT, whatever potentials they may be with cameras. Looking at potentially engaging with a realtor to look at the specific properties that were proposed throughout the meeting and looking at that. And then, as I already just summarized, revamping the 12 areas here into the 5 areas here as discussed, and a draft number 2 for the redevelopment plan. And then also, as we just discussed, budgeting, looking at contingency funds, and rainy day fund to make sure that we've got reserves at the city level.
I feel like that would inform too, because you mentioned bonds earlier tonight. And, knowing how we might could roll all that together, we don't know if we don't kind of quantify that somehow.
Your best get to get bonding would be to get a developer to want to do something in here that you can bond whatever needed to do based on what he's going to provide you. But we don't have that guy. But let's hope we get there. It'll be positive.
And you probably, everyone probably knows this already, but just in case, we did do a bond, and we just paid that off 3 years ago. And that was how we got the sewer system here on Lawrence.
Right.
Okay, and that was like a 20-year bond. But we had to do that to get our businesses off the septic tanks that were behind them.
Yeah.
And so we have done this before as a city, and it was, we ended up spending, I want to say $89,000 a year to pay that off. So it's not new. We could do a bond.
Can you give me the information on that? Or is there any records of that?
There should be. Records are another issue we're short of.
No rush, I just wanna see what it looks like.
Sewer bond. And Councilman Lewandowski, I don't want to not mention, the looking at the 2015 spreadsheet, holding on to that at the city level to make sure we're tracking, progress on multiple projects when we go to a more broad redevelopment plan.
I appreciate that.
Anything I missed from any council members?
So let me just ask a few clarifying questions. Janice, did you get everything you think you need from them?
Yep, I think I've already in my mind, I've got how I'm gonna write it out, so I just need to, get it to Jake.
Councilman Knight, all these numbers you rattled off and I put into 3 columns, was this your strike and adds, which was one of Jamie's requests to all 5 of you?
Well, I actually subscribe to the general method of putting some paragraphs.
Uh-huh.
But if you need direction to know kind of where I'm thinking,
You're at 10.
yeah, I don't have a problem with the yeses. There's 2 no's that I don't know whether it fits in, there's really an issue. I'm not gonna, probably it's not gonna be a big deal for me.
Okay.
And then the question marks, I said that's stuff that we're already doing, we're gonna do. It's just kind of letting you know where I'm at. So if you need further clarity, reach out.
Well, no, I got 5 of you, that's the only one that I saw that. Did anybody else have any?
So,
I'm not for relisting 100 items, I'll put it that way.
Okay.
I want to point out item 118. And
Just for everyone, youth activities.
youth activities, right. And the item was hold some organized sporting events. And the items listed were not items for our youth. Our youth do not participate in pro watercross or motorcycle. That is not a youth activity for our citizens.
That's more of an event.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I have that struck as well.
Yes, and I still hold that we need to do that kind of thing. We need to have a 3-on-3 basketball tournament. We need to have a city tennis tournament. We need to have a city beach ball tournament. We need to do something for our youth. And
Get those basketball courts done and the tennis courts will help.
I'm 100% behind that.
If it's ready, it can be done.
Finish what we started. Let's do it, and then let's celebrate it. That'd be a great way to open the brand new basketball court, to open the brand new tennis courts, to open the brand new pickleball.
Ribbon cutting.
Yes, a ribbon cutting and a little
Pictures in the
youth
paper.
competition.
Can we get a snow cone vendor for that?
I'll do it. What?
You've got a couple kids, Councilman Welch has some grandkids, Mayor has some grandkids.
Yeah, I told Jamie I was gonna get with him on a couple of these things I had questions about, but do these, let's go back to the 5 buckets. There's, I guess, 141 numbers on here. Then the ones that are completed will fall out if they're truly completed.
If they're truly completed.
Except for the ones that are ongoing and they're gonna stay in the strategic plan.
Hopefully they're already in the strategic plan.
Right. So in the context, the plan that James.
CRA plan.
CRA plan, sorry. The ones that are, I guess, future, are they gonna be discussed in detail in the CRA plan? Or are they just gonna stay in the category?
No, yeah, we're just gonna have a
Okay,
general
thank you.
paragraph on each thing, and then
Gotcha.
that'll give you the flexibility when you do the budgeting to have specific projects.
Thank you, okay, that helps.
When would be, I could have a layup question here, because they're gonna be having some budget meetings, we're gonna know more about the state over the summer, where they're going. When's the anticipated timeline for voting on some of this? Are we thinking late August, September, when are we gonna be doing this?
So you're kind of leading into 2 things I wanted to gain some consensus on. Are we all done with CRA stuff?
I
Can
think
we have P and city manager comments and suggestions?
I'm good.
Okay.
we're good.
So it took us a little over an hour in our last meeting just to get to the committee reports before y'all even acted on one agenda item. I'm gonna suggest for the month of June, we brief by exception. If Solo's got something burning, or the airport's got something burning, I have them report, but other than that, let's skip a month on that. And we'll try to bring you a few defined things that act on possibly your financial things, and a good update on the CRA progress towards this plan. Traditionally,
Can I ask something?
yep,
Can you close the CRA meeting and
Sure.
then just have,
well, the mayor can.
or
Yes,
whatever?
okay.
Just because you're talking city,
Sure.
city general?
Yep, close the CRA workshop.
CRA Workshop is adjourned.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Janice, we
We're
appreciate it.
still taking minutes and rolling, we're all in the public
Okay,
here.
yeah.
I'm not asking you to vote for